Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prizepicks and the Gametime app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat presented by Prizepicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And we're presented by Gametime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. How's your post St. Patrick's Day come down?
You know what? Got the hell out of there. It's never worth it. It's never worth it, Evan. It's nope. I've said this before we started recording. I don't want to be a curmudgeon. I don't want to be the fun police here. I think if you're going out, you're having some beers, you're knocking back some Guinness, that's totally fine. Have a good time. When you're pissing on my fucking street and you're pissing in my alley and on my stairs,
vomiting
I got a problem.
Everywhere.
You college kids and you kids from the burbs who stop dropping your eyes like a bunch of assholes when you come into the city.
16-year-olds.
Not pointing to you, Evan. I'm just saying.
I agree.
There's a large influx. I saw a lot of people getting off those commuter rails over at South Station on Sunday. It was a mess. So, again, not to be a curmudgeon, but I will be. I hate it. I always get out of the city on St. Patrick's Day. It ain't worth it. I said to you how I describe it is again, it's like going to New Orleans, and like my idea at this point in my old age of like New Orleans, great food. You go with your buddies, go to a nice restaurant. You have some beers that night. You find like a quiet bar, have a few beers, and then you walk out. And then what happens is, like it is in Southie, you're trying to have a good time. Someone takes a bottle of piss and throws in your face, and then some drunk asshole from Toledo sucker punches your friend. I'm not saying from experience. I'm just saying that is what the South Boston Parade is. Even
Sounds
if
like a skit from the Three Stooges.
Even if you wanted to have a good time at the parade, you're going to be surrounded by assholes. You're going to be stuck in amateur hour, and it sucks. So, no, I am not a fan. And if you pissed on my stairs, if you're listening to this right now, I'm going to find the ring footage. And I'll tweet it out. I don't give a shit anymore. So
that could be a little problematic. I've never been.
We need shame. Even if we get to be banned off X, that's also fine.
Bullying is good. Bullying keeps everybody in check. I'm with you on that. I have never been. I've never wanted to go. The Southie Parade looks horrible. And I can imagine you live there. I imagine when you come back to your house after it's all over, it's sort of like people who come back after wildfires or hurricanes.
Dude, it's like
and they're
Childish
like,
Gambino.
I hope my house is still there. I hope it's still standing.
Dude, the people next door to us, and again, like if you want to have a house party, that's fine. You want to play Creed? Listen, I'll be jamming in the kitchen too if I hear you blasting it. That's fine. If you're gonna rent a friggin' porta potty and then put it outside of my house because you have so many people that it's going to destroy your indoor plumbing.
What?
Then we have a fucking problem here.
Your neighbors did that?
Yes. In front of my house.
Trash.
Yes.
Trash.
Stop doing this. Listen.
God. You're serious? They actually
yes.
I didn't know this.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'll send you the friggin' photo. We got nothing to talk about. We can talk about the Bruins if we want to. I can talk all day about this parade and how much I hate it, Evan. It ain't fun.
How is it still going on? I see all the fight videos, which are highly entertaining. You know, you got like 17-year-olds beating the crap out of each other at Raising Cane's, or, you know, coming back home on the commuter rail, or, you know, some jackass trying to like tackle a cop. Mm-hmm. But like, how does this keep happening? How do they do this every year?
I couldn't tell you. It seems like every year it's getting more and more people over there. It also didn't help that it was actually a beautiful day on Sunday, which means time to break out the Borgs, baby.
That's like the Kristaps Porzingis.
The photo of like the most Boston looking cop ever pouring out the Kristaps Porzingis was
like looking at it, you know.
Yeah, it was a pretty good. I will give them credit for that, but that was the one shining light. Otherwise, in a bleak day in my neighborhood. Happy St. Patrick's Day, though, Evan.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day. Ed Sheeran at least was at the Dubliner, so I'll give him that. Didn't you Didn't that parade used to be like for families and stuff? Like and I only know this from reading Mystic River, but isn't that how that used to be? Like it was kind of just like a nice family day.
And again, there's still our kids. There's still a bunch of people I know who I grew up with who now their kids are there. And like, listen, they give you like those little snapping things that you throw and make a bunch of noise. They give you little trumpets. Like you can still have a good time. The problem is like you run the risk of like some dude from North Reading who's 17 throwing up on your shoulder. On your kids, like that's the problem.
Yes,
like
yes,
there's still plenty of stuff to see. Yeah, it's just it brings out a lot of ugly in people. And again, it's an Irish holiday. Like you're supposed to be enjoying and having a good time, but just don't be a dick. And unfortunately, everyone is a gigantic dickhead on that day, which sucks.
Yeah, it's all kids. It looks to be all kids, and they're from the burbs. Like I'm from the burbs. It was back
all
when
your
I
friends. All your friends.
I didn't go, but
they're sneaking the tequila out of that margaritas right by the Natick Mall, and they're hitting the town and causing havoc.
That's right. That's exactly what they're doing. That's right. Well, I guess we do have to talk Bruins. Unfortunately,
I guess so. Now I'm all riled up.
I know. I'm riled up about the porta potty. I would go tip it over with someone in it. Remember? Do you ever watch the movie Jackass?
Oh yes. No, that was my fear. Is that there was going to be a
cocktail
cascade
supreme?
Dude, I was worried there's going to be a deluge of poop in front of my house when I got back.
And not just the people.
Yes. No. Yeah. I don't care about the people. I care about what's coming on my front steps, dude.
I agree. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. We'll have to have someone like you'll have to tweet that photo. Yeah. Blame your neighbors. That's who you should be bullying. But the Bruins, day before, they lose to the Lightning 6-2 after losing 6-3 to the Senators on Thursday. They get 0 shots in the second against the Lightning. Then they lose to the Buffalo Sabres in overtime on Monday night in a St. Patrick's Day extravaganza where they didn't look much better. You and I sat here last week and said, wonder if the Bruins could make a little push for the playoffs. Look what they did to Tampa and Florida after the deadline. And I mentioned something. I said it's kind of like for a dog dies when it has like energy on like the last day or two. It's alive and then it's dead. And that's essentially been the Bruins, dead over the last week. They're sliding. They're about to head out west now to Vegas, Colorado. Tankathon is on, Connor. Tankathon is on.
Yeah, I think you're right, Evan. It does seem like this team got a little bit of a jolt, caught a few teams, very good teams by surprise, but the roster is what it is at this point, right? And when you've got guys who are probably a line or two above where they should be in an ideal lineup, in fact, you've got guys who are better suited for the AHL, playing middle 6 minutes, not just fourth line minutes. And you're also missing your 2 top defensemen, and that also just throws everything out of whack. Sooner or later, water is going to reach this level, right? And it does seem like that is the case with this team. And again, I think you can glean on some positives in terms of like that game against Ottawa. They at least made it somewhat competitive. And you're seeing, I think, spurts of guys that are continuing to show that they can be part of this team moving forward, right? Like Geeky and Zaka continue to play pretty well. Husnudinov continues to have that high motor. Middlestad's been making a few plays here and there. And those probably more of the first couple of games that he was up here, but you're still seeing glimpses of these guys, right? And I think right now you have to look at more on a individual basis than maybe the team-wide product, right? Like it's all about trying to find whatever silver linings you can with the players as they do the heavy work this offseason, really kind of retool this roster on the fly. But in terms of just the results being what they are now, and as you said, 21-0 in the second period on Saturday against Tampa. Pretty rough. Not ideal. And then, you lose to a Buffalo team that seemed hell-bent on giving that game to you on multiple occasions. Like, refused to kind of step on your throat, especially in overtime. A couple of quality chances they couldn't bury before they finally did. So, yeah, the team is what it is right now. It's not going to be pretty. I guess the only consolation you have is one, you only got 13 games to go, so hang in there. And again, too, if this is a thing where in this window you're either calling guys up, you're giving guys like Husnudinov more minutes to see what they can show during this final stretch of the year, and most importantly, you hope your draft odds, you're kind of trying to look for the long-term goals right now. And I think that's, if you're a Bruins fan trying to get through these final 4 weeks, got to look to that. Not just the draft, but also how some guys can make the most of this time, because it's also, again, it's not often the Bruins are not making the playoffs and are out of the playoff picture and are gunning for a top 10 pick. But there's also been very few times where the Bruins have had this stretch of 13 games where the pressure, the consequences aren't really there. Like, now you have a window to see what some of these guys can do. So, like, whether it's giving guys like Middlestad and Hushinginov and Yoki Haru more minutes, whether it's calling up Lysell, which they did on Tuesday, now's the time. You got a blank slate. So let's see if any of these guys can stick and see if they can build something going into next year, which is what the main focus should be for the players, the team, and the fans, I think, at this point of the season.
I do feel bad for fans, because I will see the occasional fan on Twitter being like, I genuinely enjoy watching the Bruins. Like, it's my thing, which, like, we're all, you and I are in that same boat of, like, that's our thing to do. We talk about it, we write about it, we watch it, cover it, all that stuff. I think for fans, obviously, it's really hard right now. And I think that's where, like, we've talked about this for the last couple of years, where people, when they say, well, the Bruins need a full rebuild, it's like, this market's not going to be able to handle a full rebuild. And you don't want to watch what the Blackhawks are putting out, or what the Sharks have been putting out, or the Senators or the Canadians for the last bunch of years. Like, that sucks. And you're getting a glimpse of it right now, and they didn't even do a full rebuild, and you're getting a glimpse of it. I still feel bad for fans who, again, it's not a huge deal, but there are people who go to one game a year, and they bought a ticket for April they bought tickets for a game in April, and they're like, oh, they'll be in a playoff push. And, they come down from Vermont or New Hampshire or up from Connecticut, and they got to watch this. Like, I genuinely do feel bad for them, because that stinks. I do love the idea, though, that like my first year watching the Bruins was 06, 07. Or like that I remember. I probably did before, but like that I remember. And I remember like Stanislav Cheetsov and like all these random guys. And like, I wonder if like Hustadinov is going to be like one of those guys that in like 12 years, like the new, like Petrov McGuire 2.0, like the younger
Petrov McGuire's son.
Yeah, Petrov McGuire's son, Petrov McGuire Jr. is going to be, or like Spoke Z Jr. is going to be tweeting like, remember Marat Hutskadinov?
Yes.
Like I do get a kick out of that. From this, but they are sliding, and the question is really, how far can they slide? I think right now it is full on. Playoffs are out of sight, even from last week when we talked about it, like, oh, it'll be a fun story. I don't think that is coming close to happening. So where can they get? I think right now they're the ninth pick?
They're the ninth pick, but everyone is so jumbled that, again, you lose like another 2 in a row, like you're dropping into like the 6 or 7.
Yeah, so again, Islanders are 1 point below them. So like the Islanders are in a better spot for a draft pick. I think they're like 8th. Then you have the Penguins, who are at like 66 points. And the Bruins also have games in hand on the Islanders. So the Islanders can pass them there. You have Anaheim, you have Seattle. You have games in hand on both of them. And then you got like Philly, who's not, you're only 5 points ahead of Philly. So, and
they're plummeting. So,
yeah. So again, but you're probably not catching Buffalo. You're definitely not catching the Blackhawks or the Predators or the Sharks. So you're not getting a top 4, but can you get to 6? Like, I don't think that's out of the question. So if you get the 6th pick, you increase your odds. Maybe the ping pong balls fall your way a little bit. Listen, I don't know. I'm all for it. Lose every game from here on out. I'm for it.
Yeah, I think you look at it right. People say this isn't the deepest draft, but there are tiers to it, right? So again, listen, if you increase your chances of getting pick number 2 or 3, and all of a sudden you got Misa or Hagens, then you're good to go. You're working with house money for this offseason in terms of adding talent on the wing, knowing you've got a legit guy, whether it's next year or the year after, you got someone coming up who, franchise savior or not, is going to be a good player in the NHL for a long time. And again, you can end up at 10, 9, and a guy like O'Brien could be there. But if you're able to get into the 6 to 8 range, and it means you have a shot at Denoyers, who's put up points in the queue, or like McQueen, who's a 6'5" centerman, has some back issues, which means he could drop a little bit, but like you look at his talent, like if you're able to get a guy like that could be maybe not a top line franchise center, but a high end or just a 10-year second line center, Yeah, you need that. Like you can make the case you need two of them, but if you're able to land someone of that talent and put them in your pipeline, and you can then this offseason, you don't have to go fishing for a center if one's not there. You don't have to like give up assets for a guy that doesn't move the needle or sign a guy way above his pay grade. If you have someone like that, you can maybe target talent on the wing, stay competitive, knowing you have someone on the upswing in the years ahead. So I do think right now, it's all about the Bruins' priority has to be maximizing a draft pick. I wouldn't say tank as a result, but I think the roster is what it is. So I don't think it's really it's probably more of an organic thing anyway, the way the team is. But it's all about having players, giving them opportunity right now where the stakes are low, whether it's the guys like Lysell or the newcomers you brought in. See what they can do, see if they can pop down the stretch and gives you some at least momentum, or maybe just a way to gauge players for next year. And then I think it's all about that draft pick. And that's the best way to start off what should be a very, very busy offseason for this team.
It is. I agree. And I think that's kind of the route you have to take. I want to get into some comments from Don Sweeney that he made to you. And then I want to get into a column by your colleague as well that I thought was quite interesting. But first, our friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long over at Prizepicks. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win, as I said, up to 1,000 times your cash. And again, Prizepicks, you can mix and match your player projections from different sports. It doesn't just have to be one game. Does not have to be one game. It can be from multiple games. Prizepicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning continues. You got Connor McDavid going for it, Austin Matthews. On the Bruins side of things, David Pastrnak continues to produce. Morgan Geekie continues to produce. I've been saying this for a long time. Like, if you take my advice there, it's been going pretty well for both those guys. Those guys have been producing, so make sure to go do that. So, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Run your game over at Prizepicks. So, you caught up with Don Sweeney, caught up with the GM, caught up. I got some interesting things out of him. And there's three things I want to hit on. And one of them I thought was really interesting about sort of the guys they got back at the deadline. And it sort of is in line with the Pavel Zacha when they got Zacha of here's a guy who's underutilized, like Moneyball, sort of like Moneyball Bruins are back. Getting these guys, who sort of not misfit toys, but guys who have been underutilized. He said, we certainly lost quality people and quality players that have been well established in this league and have gone off and will have immediate success and impact on their teams. We just took a change of direction in terms of where we were, identifying what our scouts did a fabulous job of, which is identifying some players that are younger, that in a new environment and a new opportunity, they're likely to get a bump out of that. I think seeing Hustadinov go from short ice, now all of a sudden playing 14, 15 minutes. Casey Middlestat wasn't really playing much power play. Now he's a primary part of that for us. Even Henri Jokiharju, for that matter, wasn't 19 minutes at the start of the year. So I think they're excited about it. And it shows in the fact that they've gone out and played well. Now, he said this to you, what was it, last week?
Right before Saturday's game against Tampa. So the timing, unfortunately. But 2-1 at the time, right? Had the loss to Ottawa, but again, had guys that came back. Hustadinov had a goal. So, yeah, the timing, unfortunately, the Bruins have decided to bottom out after that. But, you can see where I think their line of thinking is where, as you said, whether it's a guy like Zacha who was underutilized in New Jersey or even a guy like Geekie, you look at his minutes and where he was utilized with Seattle. I think for the Bruins, right, like their big plans are going to lie in this offseason as opposed when you're looking at, are they going to throw a contract at Mitch Marner? Are they going to throw a contract at Brock Besser or Nikolai Ehlers or someone like that? Are they going to try to make a hockey trade for an impact player? There's all those, but still have to fill out the rest of your roster. And I think you look at like one of the things that's underrated about what the Capitals did, right, is that they've just found guys that have been underutilized that they put in spots and they've succeeded. Like you can look at the Dubois and like the Chikrins and buying low on these guys, but there's also like
Strome even, right?
Strome
was
saying Strome was kind of an underutilized guy, and like he's a top line player for them now, but he's not a 80-point guy. And that's not to say that like Casey Middlestad's going to be an 80-point guy, but when you have guys that you can plug across your lineup that you can cater the lineup, or you can put them in spots where their skills are best utilized, then you drive value, right? It's just like you look at the Bruins, if you can fill out a lot of your roster with Geeky and Zacha, who aren't star players, but clearly could play well with David Pastrnak. And you can then add in Middlestad, who can be an asset on the power play and can be in a middle six spot. Husendinov, like if you asked me before you got him, if he's just a fourth line guy, I'd probably say so. But with his motor, is he more of a third line player, right? Is it like if you're going in pairs, is like Lindholm and Husendinov like a third line kind of group? I know Bruins fans don't want to hear Lindholm is a 3C, but if that's the way it shakes out, like, does Husendinov have more to offer there? Same with a guy like Yuki Haru, like, not a star player by any means, but if you re-sign him and that's, let's say you have a pairing of Zadorov and Yuki Haru, leave those guys alone. Let them marinate. You know what you have in those players. So I think for the Bruins, yeah, you can look at the flashy signings they could try to make of the trades, and that's important. That's going to move the needle, but it's also about filling out your roster. And if you have guys that you think have more to offer, I think that was kind of what the priority is. You can look at the draft picks, look at Fraser Minton, you can look at Will Zellers, all those guys, and that's all important as part of that ongoing retool, but also it's about guys that help you out right now. And I think that was their priority. Beyond just changing up the composition of the roster, adding more speed, especially up front, I think it's about finding guys that just have maybe a little bit more to give. And if you have just guys that pull on the rope, same with Geeky, same with Zacha, you're going to have a pretty balanced lineup. And that's what this Bruins team has not had this entire year. So I think that was a priority for this team.
Yeah, and again, you can't bottom out. You have David Pastrnak.
Yeah.
You have David Pastrnak. Like he's in his prime. He's in his prime. You can't just let him go. You don't want him in a position where he's like, when are we going to win anytime soon? Like that's the other end of this too, where you need guys who can not only play with him, but produce as well, and at least be competitive in the next couple years as you sort of build towards that next, hopefully, a sort of a run. And speaking of Pastrnak, I thought Sweeney had very interesting comments on him. He says, quote, "I think David's done a tremendous job since we did make some of these moves to understand without anybody telling him, like, okay, I've had so many great players that I've learned from, so many great people that I've leaned on, and now it's his time," which is not easy. He's still our star player. He's expected to go out and produce and perform, and all of a sudden you're leading as well. There's a lot more ownership on that. He's obviously had great people to tap into. It's hard because there's a void there. Brad was a phenomenal player here for us and grew to be a leader himself in that same regard. And David is leading the same direction. I think if there's one big takeaway or sort of switch that's happened this year, is that Pastrnak has moved himself into probably being the next captain.
Yeah, he's done a really, really good job. And again, like, we as the media can only glean what these guys say post-game. We're not in the room immediately after a loss or a win or what have you. But I've been impressed with just how he's kind of handled himself over what has been a pretty disastrous year in terms of just everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. I was on 98.5 earlier this morning talking about the season. And it's like, it feels like the season has been 3 years. Like Montgomery being the coach felt like it was years ago.
Yep.
And there's been a lot that's gone wrong. From the first day of camp with Swayman not being here, Lindholm being banged up and missing 10 plus days, Montgomery, everything has gone wrong this year. Like this whole year has just been, yes, exactly. Everything, all of my coins are now worth nothing. It's been a rough year, Evan. So I think you look at it, right, how Pastrnak has handled it. And again, it's not also ideal for him where, as Sweeney said, he's the star player. Like you usually can just lead by example there. It's like if you're a good enough player, been there for a while, you usually get the A by like off of merit and what, you let the play do the talking. To be a guy that's stepping into that role when things aren't going right, to talk to the media every night, usually about a lot of the same questions, the same flaws kind of hurting this team, being positive, being, frustrated when they lose, but trying to find the silver linings, helping out younger players that are trying to find their footing with the Bruins. And also just the leadership void, not only the guys that were traded, but, and it's not just Marchand, but, Coyle and Carlo were kind of that ancillary leadership core, but he also doesn't have Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm in the room either. I mean, like you look at the way that the team is in terms of like healthy skaters on the Bruins. Morgan Geeky is the third longest tenured player in terms of games played.
That's incredible.
It's Pastrnak, and then it's Zacha, and then Kiki has like 140 or something games, I think, with the Bruins, or maybe just under that, and he's third on the team right now. Once you take McAvoy and Lindholm out in terms of their availability, which is wild. That's just
crazy
how much this team has changed over the last couple of years, and it's not like they even have last year where you had the Shattenkirks and the Van Riemsdykes and the Maroons and Foligno. You don't have any of that either. Like, it's a young team, a lot of new faces, and Pastrnak, beyond the weight of trying to drag this team into the playoffs, it's probably not going to happen, but the only reason why they're remotely close is because of David Pastrnak. To take on that leadership on top of all that in a year where shit has not gone right has been really, really impressive. So, again, we'll see what happens this offseason as to what they do, what Brad Marchand does as well. But for Pastrnak himself, he's made, I think, a really, really compelling case to be a guy that can lead the charge and lead in his own way too, right? Like, people probably look at him as this fun-loving guy, but very competitive guy, wants to win. I think that's the priority of everything. You've had multiple post-game pressers where they've talked about his point streaks after losses, and he's like, I don't give a shit about those. I'd rather just win. Like, a guy that I think
that's the right mindset.
Understands the role. Yeah. So, again, long-winded, but I've been really impressed with what he's provided so far this year.
I think he's moved into that. I think he's moved into that role, and he's definitely been the captain since Marchand left, because he's been playing. There's only 3 guys from that 22-23 team on this roster. It's Pastrnak, Zacha, and then you have Swayman, who has been rough of late. And it's hard to pin Saturday's loss on him against Tampa, because, again, that whole team played like garbage. But again, you look at that Ottawa game that you and I had circled. It's like, all right, like, if they win that
game of the year,
yeah, like, that's a big game. Gives up that terrible first goal, and was out by the end of the first period. And Sweeney spoke on Swayman, saying, I think Sway's the only one that can honestly tell you how it's gone and how those situations changed for him. We all felt it would be different, would be a challenge. Obviously, our team hasn't played as well. He's had pockets of games where he's played really well, and other times where I think he'd admit that he hasn't lived up to what he'd hoped and the type of year we wanted to have. But he's really the only one that can answer in terms of how he feels being in this position now for the very first time in his career. Whatever. Big thing with Swayman is, and you see this with different people saying that contract is a bust. What, they got the wrong goalie. They should have signed Ullmark. I think there's a lot of revisionist history there. I mean, Ullmark was really not great in the playoffs a couple of years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And
hasn't had injuries.
Also didn't look good with extended play time. And I think with Swayman, like, again, you go back to the playoffs last year, and it was like, all right, he can play well in longer stretches. I'm not saying that he's going to live up to every dollar and cent of this contract. I'm not saying that. But I think it's way too early to sit here and say that contract isn't worth it. They made a mistake. Now, could they have made a mistake? Yeah, of course they could have. If he's having the same year he's having this year, next year, we'll be sitting here in March of 2026 going, yeah, that they mishandled that. They mishandled that. They should have found a way to keep both or platoon them. And I still think you got to platoon him a little bit more than they have. I mean, the third straight start stats are terrible. Terrible. But he didn't have a full training camp. No full training camp. Contract negotiations that went really south to start the year. Coach is halfway out the door. The team defense is terrible. The roster's bad. This was not the year that he was going to put up a Vezina caliber year. Now, there are people who are going to reply back to me on that and say, well, a great goalie should overcome all of that. And I will say there have been games that he's stolen for you. I'm not saying he's stolen every game. I'm not saying he's been great. He's had a bad year. Like, I'm not trying to crap polish this. I'm not. But I'm willing to give him next year before I say this is a bust or that the contract is not worth it. Like, I think a full training camp and a better roster and a coach who's fully bought in, I think, are essential to that.
Yeah, I think you need to give him some leeway, at least for this year. And again, as you said, it's not been a good year for him. Like, his regression has coincided with this team bottoming out and not making the playoffs. So it has been a serious step back for him. It's much like the team. A lot that has gone wrong in terms of Swayman with the contract, not having ample time to get up to speed. You have, again, the expected growing pains of having the number one role. Like, beyond the fact that he doesn't have a safety blanket in Ullmark, where if he has a bad start or two, hey, let's turn to the Vezina winner to ride out the next 2-3 games. You don't have that security. So when you're stuck in a rut, you're kind of tasked with clawing your way out of it. And that usually can sometimes lead to more tough results. So you have that. And also, like, his trajectory was different from a lot of guys, where he played at Maine and was a workhorse there, but you're playing, Fridays and Saturdays, and then you're done for the week. Yes. Like, didn't play a whole lot in Providence. So he wasn't really used to the schedule ramping up to that degree. He goes right up to the NHL, essentially, barely spent time down there in the AHL. And then, was behind Tuukka for a little bit, and then was part of just that goalie rotation. So he's had the luxury of being on this kind of regimented, lighter schedule and lighter workload for a long time. So there was, I think, always going to be growing pains, even if he had a full training camp. It's all about how he bounces back from it. And I think the Bruins, and I myself view him as a guy that should bounce back with a full year, just a clean slate. Again, I think a lot of guys can benefit from being like, man, fuck this year. Like, let's take a break, go on vacation,
get
rest
out.
I even look at guys like Elias Lindholm the same way, and I think he's been a disappointment too, right? And there's no changing that narrative, but like, maybe it's a year of just like taking a breath, get out of it, get, rest up and see what comes of it moving forward. And I put probably more faith in Swayman, at least getting back to where he should be, which is a capable number one goalie. I'm not saying that, and if you're a Bruins fan expecting him to, follow up what we did in the playoffs last year and have a .930 save percentage in the regular season, like, that was never going to happen, but we've seen what he can do. And again, like, you also add in the fact that, goaltending is also part of a product of the guys in front of him, and it's also just a volatile position. Like, who's also having the same conversations as Bruins fans? It's Rangers fans talking about Igor Shesterkin and his contract right now, because he's not played particularly well. But I bet you, if Bruins fans, who I know you guys don't watch every Rangers game, were asking, would you take Shesterkin? People are like, yeah, of course. Yeah, he's Igor Shesterkin. He's the best fucking goalie in the league. Like, again, guys have down years as well. I'm not saying, like, if you can clip that, and if Swayman is bad next year, you can throw it in my face, and like, there is that risk. And if that is the issue and he's still struggling next year with the workload, the Bruins have bigger problems to deal with in terms of how you augment this team. But I do think for their sake and for what Swayman has to do, it's all about hitting the reset button and seeing what you can do next year. Because again, the talent is there. We've seen it. We've seen it on a higher stage than what it's been this year. I think he just needs to, put this year in the gutter and see if he can build off of it moving forward.
And this whole idea of like, they should have kept Ullmark. Did I hear anyone saying that in April and May and June of last year? Can we go? Is there a single person who was like, nope, keep Ullmark?
The thing I remember from Game 6 against Florida, after Florida scores with minute and something or other left in the game, not really a great goal, honestly. Like, was when you're like, oh, don't really like that from Forsling. But at the end of that game was the entire garden cheering on Jeremy Swayman, the guy that was the only reason you were playing into May, middle of May.
Yes.
Like, guy was honestly on top of the world, and it's been an eventful year for him since then in terms of the contract, the play, all that stuff. Some of it, again, comes with the responsibility of being the guy that's making $8 million or over $8 million a year moving forward. So that, of course, plays into it. But we've seen what he can do on a stage like that. It's all about, I think, just bouncing back. And the one thing that I think we've noticed from Swayman over the years is he doesn't usually, let things snowball, at least over, multiple years. He usually seems to always be positive, always try to bounce back from situations and setbacks like this. So we'll see if we get to October, whatever it will be, October 5th or 6th when the season starts, and the Bruins have an upgraded forward core and he gives up 5 goals. Then, but again, that is a problem for another day. But I think the Bruins are banking on him bouncing back going into next year. At least they hope.
We'll save that for future shows. Before we get into some ownership stuff, I want to talk about our friends at Gametime. Gametime is back. Gametime is back with Bruins Beat and Poke the Bear, which is awesome. And it comes at a great time because right now, Connor, Bruins tickets are not particularly expensive on the resale market, which is very nice. Very nice. And Gametime has that great feature that I love. Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And again, you can do this day of. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. There's the all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature, shows you the total up front. You're not crushed by any fees. At checkout, you know what you're paying from the start. You got seat views. You can see where you're sitting. And then, of course, there's Game Time ticket coverage, which your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I'll also say this, Connor. It's getting nice out. Getting a little bit nicer out. And you know what nicer out means? Baseball season. It means baseball season. Fenway, crack of the bat, all that. And then you've also got, if you're listening in a different part of the country, there are baseball stadiums near you. And Game Time, it's just a great time to go out. Great time to go out, get some spring air, and do it with our friends over at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Connor, what time is it?
Game time.
It's game time. That's for sure. It is, in fact, very much game time. So your colleague, Kevin Paul DuPont, wrote a story titled, "Will the Bruins ownership do anything about this mess?" Now, Dupes has been around a long time. Knows that, covered the Jacobs a long time. What year what was his first year on the beat? Like the 70s? A long time.
I'm not the official biographer of Dupe, so I couldn't tell you, but he has been covering the team for a long time. He's covered the Jacobs, especially that regime, for a long time. So he knows them pretty well.
Very much so. And there was one graph in this story that I think we could talk about forever. And it's this. Virtually everything the Jacobses know about hockey, their team and how it's constructed, and how the hockey sausage is made up and down the organization, is based on what Cam Neely and Don Sweeney tell them. And that, to me, is big. Now, we have a pretty good idea about that, but hearing that from Kevin obviously is a big deal. A lot of fans probably read that and said, oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. Damn it. That's not good. And I think it hits at, for people who say, and I've said this all year, is that I don't feel they're going to get fired anytime soon. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm saying that I don't think that they will get fired anytime soon. I just don't. Until they start, until the boos continue and people stop going to games and they fall further and further out of the playoff picture, for a couple of years in a row. Like they like those guys. Now the question will be when Jeremy Jacobs moves on and as Charlie Jacobs gets more and more of a hand on this organization, which it feels like he sort of is already getting. Zdeno, I talked about this with Court Lalonde, I think, we talked about this on, I think it was Friday. Zdeno Chara now is in the mix. We haven't heard much about that. What is that? What's he doing? They kind of just, that sort of came out at a weird time too. And I just wonder, if the Jacobses are getting their hockey knowledge and information and stuff on the team from Sweeney and Neely, when does that dam have to break for those guys to go? And my thinking, as I just said, is you got to miss the playoffs a couple years in a row, or you need these drafts to pile up, going forward after you dealt core pieces and you're playing a little bit more for the draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this upcoming season is going to be pivotal for them. I'm not expecting, even if the Bruins bottom out the rest of the way, right? I don't think that's going to change the Bruins ownership's perspective. I fully expect Sweeney and Neely to be there this offseason because I think for the Jacobs family's point of view, it's all right, you've steered us through this kind of contention window we had. It went south this year. Let's see what you can do to fix things. And I think, you wouldn't give them the go-ahead to not just move on from Brad Marchand, the captain, but guys who had term that, if you're just trying to, cast this as a one-off year and everything has gone wrong, you probably keep Brendan Carlo, who's on a pretty good contract, right? But if you're going to give your GM and ownership group the opportunity to really change up your roster, I think you're still handing them the keys to be all right, this year's been a mess. How do you untangle it? And how do you build up that next core of talent? So if they go into this offseason and you get to where we are in 2026 and the Bruins are back in the playoff picture. You've got a center in, whether it's in juniors or in college, who's putting up numbers and is either getting ready to make his debut in March and help out an already good team. If you made the right hockey trades to bring in new talent, if you've got, you sign friggin' Mitch Marner or someone that I know Bruins fans would freak out about, but if you're just trying to add talent on the wing and you want a guy that can just drive play with whoever else you sign, like, that is an absolute strategy you could go with. But if all of a sudden things take another step back, if your ability to identify talent has backfired and the draft pick you have from this miserable year is not panning out, Dean Letourneau isn't taking a step forward in his second year at BC, Swayman, who he gave this contract to after an extended contract stalemate, is continuing to struggle, and all the other free agent signings like Lindholm and Zadorov and whoever else you allocated now this $29 million in cap space this year, if those guys aren't moving the needle and you're looking more and more at a 3, 4, 5 year, not just rebuild, but like no man's land where you've kind of allocated money that you can't really move out now.
Dead cap, everything.
Yeah, that's the straw that I think breaks the camel's back. And again, you could make the case that Bruins fans won't be happy that this year isn't the straw that breaks the camel's back because it's been a miserable year. The product on the ice has not been good. It's not been fun. There's not been a lot of positives you can look at. But I think that is going to be their strategy is see what this ownership group can do, where things have gone awry, how they can untangle it. And if it's, you go into next year and you make the playoffs and the team's improved and you still have a core that you can build around your key pieces like a Pastrnak and make the most of their prime, and you're in the mix and you've got a young center on the way, or you still have draft picks that you can use moving forward, then I think they got through these kind of choppy water. But if not, and things continue to go south, then I think more drastic measures have to be taken there.
I agree. And I think that's going to be the case going forward for the next year plus. I don't. And I also think, like, I always say, stable organizations don't, fire coaches or general managers willy-nilly. And this wouldn't be a willy-nilly firing either, but no. You're going into a pivotal offseason with more draft picks than you had at the beginning, with a good amount of cap space. Do you really want a full new front office staff handling that? And a lot of fans will go, yes, please.
Like in 2015?
That's what I mean. They were not ready for that draft. I don't care what anybody tells me. They were not ready at all for that draft. And you don't want that to repeat literally 10 years later. So they get a chance to do it. I'm not saying that they're the right ones to do it. I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that they succeed, but it's just the way it is. And but I do think that, if the Jacobs continue to kind of just get their briefings from Sweeney and Neely, they will also continue to have jobs for a long time. And it's going to take a lot for those guys to get fired, which is why I think the fire Sweeney chance won't, fully accomplish that goal either. But it does signal that people are unhappy, and fans have every right to do that. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way, the remainder of this Bruins season going into the off season, which should be maybe even busier than what we're doing right now. But for the final 4 weeks of the year, we still have a lot of features, columns, breakdowns, all in the works for you to read. So please read all of my stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.